Why Things Bite Back by Edward Tenner is a book from 1996, and it discusses the topic of the unintended consequences of technological advances. And those can be negative or positive or unexpected or a combination of all three. Edward Tenner, the author, is a historian, a writer, a public speaker, a professor, and he also won the Guggenheim Fellowship for Natural Science, and he is a writer who analyzes cultural aspects of technological change. Tenner's book actually opens with an anecdote about an episode of The Twilight Zone called A Thing About Machines. And I wanted to include some clips from that episode because I think they really highlight just one of the ways that even back then technology was viewed not always as a positive.
How are you today, Mr. Finchley?
I'll answer that burning question after you tell me what's wrong with that miracle of modern science. And also exactly how much this current larceny is going to cost me.
I'll send you a bill.
Of that I have no doubt.
Finchley, what is it with you and machines?
I shall file that idiotic question in my memorabilia, to be referred to at some future date when I write my memoirs. You, my good friend, will fill one entire chapter, entitled The Most Forgettable Person I Ever Met.
This is Mr. Bartlett Finchley, age 48. A practicing sophisticate who writes very special and very precious things for gourmet magazines and the like. He's a bachelor and a recluse with few friends. In short, Mr. Bartlett Finchley is a malcontent, born either too late or too early in the century, and who in just a moment will enter a realm where muscles and the will to fight back are not limited to human beings. Next stop for Mr. Bartlett Finchley, the Twilight Zone.
That clock over the mantelpiece. Oh, I threw it away. What I'm getting at, Miss Rogers, is that for as long as I have lived, I have never been able to operate machines.
Mr. Finchley, I think you ought to see a doctor.
A doctor? If you're depressed, see a doctor. If you're happy, see a doctor.
I think you're terribly ill and you need medical attention. I also think that you're suffering from a bad case of nerves due to lack of sleep, and that way down deep you yourself realize that these are nothing more than delusions.
I will not be intimidated by machines, so it follows that no empty-headed little female with a mechanical face can do anything to me either.
Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out of here!
I won't!
Funny, they usually float.
What do you mean, usually?
Well, he was on the bottom. He hadn't come up. He wasn't weighted either. There was nothing to hold him down.
Huh.
His eyes were open. He looked scared, like something had been chasing him or something. I wonder what it was that could have scared him.
Whatever it was, it's a little item he took along with him.
Yeah.
It could just be that Mr. Bartlett Finchley succumbed from a heart attack and a set of delusions. It could just be that he was tormented by an imagination as sharp as his wit and as pointed as his dislikes. But as perceived by those attending, this is one explanation that has left the premises with the deceased. Look for it filed under M for machines in the Twilight Zone.
While the episode of The Twilight Zone dramatized how a man's negative relationship with his machines ultimately led to his death, Tenner's book also covers the unintended consequences of our everyday interactions with our own machines. Some can be positive interactions, some can be negative, and some can be a combination of the two that creates a whole unexpected consequence in and of itself. There are trade-offs and rearranging effects that can pop up from using objects that we don't even think about, such as the negative effect of non-use. So in this slide, I have a few examples of things that the more they get used, the smoother they run. Obviously, your car needs regular maintenance to keep running normally. Similarly, a sewing machine, the more you use it, the smoother it runs. And wooden instruments as well. In the book, Tenner talks about how we have some 100-year-old instruments that every few months get used by professional orchestras, because if they're not used pretty regularly, they can fall into disrepair and they'd be lost. Similarly, another unexpected consequence would be the idea of replacing things for things. So an example Tenner gives is people used to use laundry services, send out your clothes, and then, get them back already washed and pressed for you. Then with the invention of the washing machine, it was supposed to save so much time and so much money, but women tended to end up spending more time doing laundry at home because now they had to stay and do it themselves versus just, sending it out and getting it back. Other things to consider are the idea of trade-offs. An example given in the book is the idea of airline seatbelts. If putting seatbelts in an airline ultimately raises the ticket price, it's a trade-off because it is in the end really a safety feature and it's there to help you. So the trade-off is you're safer on the plane, but you are paying a little more because the plane had to install the seatbelts. Another unintended consequence mentioned in the book is the idea of the revenge effect. And the example given here is if you take medication to help with your thinning hair and the medication ultimately causes you to lose more hair, that's a revenge effect. Ultimately, I really did enjoy this book. I found it thought-provoking, things that I wouldn't normally have considered, but it was very outdated. It was published in 1996. And I didn't really think that it was going to be such a big deal until I would hit certain parts of the book and he would talk about using MS-DOS. And it was something that I had only heard about on *Halt and Catch Fire*. And I found it really interesting talking about, really having to consider how much space you have on your CD-ROM. And it kind of stuck out as a sore thumb that this stuff is just not really relevant anymore. And he spent a whole chapter talking about how now that with the advent of the home office, people never really leave work. And all I could think of was, well, now we all carry tiny computers in our pockets and you're constantly bombarded with emails and texts and you never leave work because it's always in your front pocket. So I would wonder how he would kind of incorporate that into maybe an updated version of this book. Another thing that kind of bothered me, and I'm sure it's also related to the time that it was written, is that he tends to discuss technology as if it's something only a handful of people use. And maybe at the time that was true, but now I'm literally, screencasting this video, and I'm constantly making presentations and, making videos and things for classes and for work, and I can't really see how it wouldn't be something that people would use every day, even going as far back as, okay, people have been making photocopies for decades, and he discusses it like it's, something that only somebody with secrets of Microsoft Word can use. He actually used an example in the book about how a school was making flyers, and that one of the PTA moms would make the flyer for all the school functions. And because they updated their computer and it was too complicated for her to use, that they had to pay somebody to come and make all their flyers because none of the parents could figure out how to use the new program in the computer, which just seems kind of crazy to me. Now, the second something is new, we all just kind of jump in and figure out how to use it. So I guess it really kind of stuck out to me that it was almost kind of technological snobbery in a way. I will say, for its flaws, I really did enjoy this book, if only for kind of opening my eyes and making me really see that there are kind of trade-offs and risks and rewards when it comes to technology, things that I had never considered. The fact that, yes, we all have washing machines, but yeah, people did used to send their laundry out, and that was saving time. But it was just something that I had never considered or viewed as a trade-off. I would really love to see a follow-up to this book, see what his thoughts would be now, even though this is only published in 1996. Really, things have changed so much that I'd be curious to see the author's thoughts and if there are any new effects that hadn't been covered yet.